Hello, this is Matt Holleran from Emergence Capital Partners. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to all participants in Cloud Slam interested in the next revolution in business applications, business freemium. Where I'm going to take you today is informed by my personal experience in the client-server enterprise business application world at a company called Clarify, which is the market leader in customer support handling in its day. And then from my experience both at Salesforce.com, the leader in software as service, Salesforce automation, and other applications, as well as an investor in software as service companies at Emergence Capital. And then finally, in my capacity and working with Emergence Capital on a new sector, a new category called business freemium, which we think represents as big a change in the business application marketplace as software as service was to enterprise. And as a result, we think the business freemium companies are at the cutting edge of cloud innovation, both in the technology and the product approaches, but also in the business models. And that's where we're going to go today. So taking a step back, we've been seeing over the course of the last 3 decades that every 10 years there has been a revolution in business applications. And every 10 years there has been a new leader that has emerged in major categories, horizontal categories, and all existing markets and applications, but also in new categories. So one market that helps to make this clear and is more advanced than others, but others are following it, is the survey and customer feedback marketplace, where in the client-server enterprise application world there's a company called SPSS, which did survey analytics and survey applications and was acquired by IBM with a traditional both business and enterprise model and financial model for perpetual licenses and support. And in the software as service market, there's a company called Vici that provides for customer feedback systems and survey systems and is delivered as a software as service product, complete with a telesales and enterprise sales model that's a different model than it was for the enterprise software world like SPSS, but nonetheless is a sold product. And similarly, the software as service financial model is very different than the enterprise application market. But what we've also started to see now is a company called SurveyMonkey that many of the people on the phone may be users both professionally and or personally. And SurveyMonkey is at the forefront of the business freemium marketplace over the course of this decade, has built out a great business providing a free forever survey service where individual users infect others as part of their work process or their personal process, and then also where users auto-convert and as a result pay SurveyMonkey for increased capabilities and usage. And we think as a result, SurveyMonkey, although we are not investors in the company, has built an exceptional business and a great following of users around the world that has provided them with significant momentum. But as part of what we see here is that everything that the people at SurveyMonkey do in their business is very different from the software as service world, and the financial model is very different. And we think this is, again, representative of what you will see in existing enterprise application categories, but also in new application categories that are taking advantage of this trend. And as you can see at the bottom of the slide, in Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce.com's book called Behind the Cloud, he actually speaks to what this trend looks like when he comments that technology is always becoming lower in cost and easier to use. It's a continuum, let's ride it. And that was correct in November 1998 as they thought about Salesforce.com and where Salesforce.com could help to define the business application market. But it's useful to realize that that was 12 years ago, and much has changed in the cost of delivering services technically, but also in the business models for how you get new customers and how you do work. So again, much has changed, and we think the tide is about to turn again. So when we think about frameworks with which to assess how big a revolution does the business freemium marketplace look like relative to software as service, it's helpful, I think, to go back to the person who coined the term disruptive business or disruptive technology, in his book, The Innovators Dilemma, Clayton Christensen really used these words and framed these words. And as both a business person in applications as well as an investor at Emergence Capital, people will often use the term disruptive business model or disruptive technology, but they don't necessarily frame it in the context of both the application itself and in the model with which companies will build around that new technology. And I'd like to just, in a summary of some of the thoughts in the Innovators Dilemma, is when you see really disruptive innovation, these are the 5 major things that are highlighted in Clayton Christensen's book. The first is that the technology, the product, looks simple, it looks simpler, and looks much easier, and on first pass seems less profitable than the existing solutions from the prior era. And in general, there are new, or what were formerly very hard to serve markets that start to adopt a new approach, a new model faster than others. And as a result, there's a new approach. There's new things that you do in each functional area, and there's a new financial model that comes from that. And those are very difficult transitions for incumbents to make. And just as you saw in the move from Siebel Systems and enterprise software to Salesforce.com in the SaaS Salesforce automation world, we would anticipate to see in major categories that there will be new leaders emerge like a SurveyMonkey in other categories. And we'll really frame out some of these points and take a look at them as it relates to business freemium examples that we're seeing in the marketplace, but also in the Emergence Capital portfolio. So let's look at the business apps markets by model, and in particular map to company size. So the client-server business application market really was geared at and was driven by the very largest enterprise buyers in the world. The software as service market started and really accelerated from companies that have, say, 50 employees in them and higher, companies that have important enough needs, but also have a budget enough that they can pay for a service, but they can also pay for the sales and marketing costs that were needed for it to be sold to them, which are non-trivial, whether it's telesales or corporate sales or a field sales component. And there really historically in the business application world weren't many companies that were able to crack the less than 10 employee market, the really small business or the VSB market. In the packaged software world, QuickBooks is really the only company that was able to get after that market, and similarly, Microsoft, Mail and other calendar products were able to do so through channels and otherwise. But very few others were able to really penetrate that segment, and the reason for that was that it's expensive to have a corporate salesperson or a telesales person make a phone call into those markets. And how does the price point ultimately work and pay for that? And that's a lot of the issues. Well, now what you're seeing is Google Apps, which is a business freemium application company for email, calendar, and other, is growing dramatically and very, very quickly among business customers around the world in the less than 10 employee size. They're also have gone up market to mid and enterprise, but in the VSB market, Google Applications as a business freemium service is doing really, really well. And others are also spending their time focusing on this specific segment with the freemium model, because they don't have to sell to them and have to speak to them. The customers are seeing the application being infected by others and telling their friends. And when that happens, the customer acquisition cost really is borne by the customers, not necessarily by the company, and they're self-selecting. And then they're self-converting to become clients. Now, there are ways in which you'll need to support and service them, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But at the end of the day, many of the business freemium companies are exploiting what is now a greenfield opportunity to serve VSB companies and have penetrated that market substantially. And just as you saw in some of the other segments, as SaaS has now also moved up market, the business freemium leaders are now approaching the mid-market, and in some cases the enterprise market successfully, Google Apps being one dramatic example of that. And at the bottom of this, you see a quote from Aaron Levy, the founder and CEO of Box, and Box is an Emergence Capital portfolio company. We're pleased to be working with them. And he was saying the market and the Internet and people looking for these services and the global growth in the Internet usage by both people and small businesses around the world has changed by, in order of magnitude, the number of business users that a company can expect to engage with if they have architected their product and their company to support the model. And we think that's really a compelling difference. So from the point of view of a new market that was formerly underserved because it wasn't possible in the all-in cost curves to do so, we are definitely seeing business freemium take root and be very, very successful in the less than 10 employee companies and be moving up market. So the next point is that business freemium is approaching a new global market opportunity. Where historically in the client-server software world and in the software service world, accepted wisdom was that in addition to the U.S. and into Canada, you could profitably service clients in Europe and in Australia and in Japan. And absolutely in the business freemium world, those markets have been successful, will continue to be successful. But what's very interesting is as many small businesses are coming online and with the tremendous growth in Internet users around the world, business freemium services are being tried and being used aggressively, and companies around the world are auto-converting to use those services and take advantage of those capabilities. And given the growth in the usage in those companies and where those economies are headed, this represents really new greenfield opportunities that have been very, very poorly served that leaders in the marketplace are taking advantage of. And what you see here is a quote from Minnie King, VP of International, SurveyMonkey, off the blog, dated February 22nd, is that they have put tremendous amount of energy to internationalize their service itself, making the product available in 13 languages, but also enabling end customers to auto-convert and pay themselves in 21 currencies. And the implications in countries around the world is that there are big new markets in Brazil and in Asia that you can be opening up in the business freemium market that, again, historically were not considered to be profitable areas with the old model and the old approaches, and are absolutely profitable models that you can penetrate and penetrate uniquely. So this is another example of a market that was poorly served but is now being served very well with the new model and market approach to business freemium. So then we get into the next point in kind of Clayton Christensen's list, which is how is the actual business work different between the old models? And just like the difference between enterprise software sales and service and marketing is very different than software as service marketing and sales and service processes, we're seeing the same thing in our portfolio companies and other companies that we work with as we think about the compare and contrast between the SaaS and the business freemium models. And what you're going to see at the top here, the top row is really a software service generalized business model, and the bottom is a business freemium generalized business model. And I'll take you through a couple of examples. My main point here is to say that the work in each functional area is very different. The skills that are required are very different, and the cross-functional work is very different. And as a result, people making a transition from SaaS to business freemium really need to keep in mind that they have to be relearning and unlearning some things and then learning a whole bunch of new things that are specific to the model, and they'll need to be excited about that if they want to be successful. And at the company level, this is one of the reasons why it's very difficult for a software service company to transition to business freemium, just as it was for a enterprise software company to attempt to transition to SaaS. So on the marketing side, across many software service companies, what drives the funnel really is Google AdWords and Google AdWords spending. And when you run the math against that spend and what you drive to your site, you have to make the decision that says, is this a profitable customer acquisition cost for the software service company? But much of the lead generation is driven by Google AdWords across many companies. And the next point is it's a free trial, a 30-day free trial. But there's a huge difference between a 30-day free trial, which is ultimately controlled by the vendor and ultimately controlled by the salesperson at the end of that free trial, and a free forever version. And we'll get into what that looks like for business freemium in just a second. But many of the software service companies are operating under a 30-day free trial or some proxy. In a SaaS world, 100% or a substantial amount of the revenue is actually an order taken by a corporate salesperson over the telephone or a field sales organization. And that can be a great asset for these companies because those distribution organizations have been very successful, and when the unit economic works, that's great. But it can make for some concerns when you attempt to transition to business freemium for reasons that we'll talk about. In a SaaS world, churn is a really important issue, and retention is a really important issue. And in general, when a software service decent scale customer leaves, they're gone forever. And so a lot of the processes are really tuned to making sure that you see how customers are doing well beforehand, and then also have teams that engage with the customer when they're exhibiting signs of leaving. On the product and pricing, as you look at software service companies, you look at the product and packaging on the website, they've become increasingly complex. And part of the reason for that is a number of additions and capabilities, but part of the reason is that there's a salesperson who can interpret it on behalf of the client or something to that effect. But as you look at the bottom, and again using some highly generalizable examples, business freemium model is a little bit different. The marketing for business freemium is most of these companies rely on customers sharing the service from one company to another. An example would be an echo sign in the Emergence Capital portfolio where you send out a document for signature, and as a result there's a company and a user who may not have been exposed to electronic signatures but now is having a great experience using the service right away. So the product itself is a mechanism for creating awareness for a new capability or a new way of doing business. Or if you have millions of free users who are using your service, they're telling their colleagues and they're telling their friends. So many of the business freemium user companies actually get a substantial, if not most, of their pipeline comes into the company, and the customers come into the company from the word of mouth and from the product company-to-company virality that occurs. And very few of them are actually executing on Google AdWords spending until they get to a scale for which that's reasonable. But that's a fundamental difference in the marketing economics and a fundamental difference in where you spend your process and time in thinking about product virality, but also how you engage to encourage customers to tell their friends. So very big differences in marketing. As I mentioned, a free forever version is very different than a free trial. The good news is on a free forever version is the end customers feel less concern in engaging, feel less concern in putting in their real data because they know that they can continue to use the service past the 30-day trial or 60-day trial window. So the economics and the numbers for those who actually enter into the free forever version versus a free trial is a substantially higher percentage for those who are wanting to choose to engage because they're not worried about hitting a dead end. But then you get to the sales process, and in many cases, many of the business freemium leaders for a long time did not have anyone in the sales capacity. It was entirely auto-convert from the end customers. And that's a very, very big difference in how you think about sales. And how do you market to those free users? How do you engage them and show them the features and capabilities that would make them want to auto-convert? It's a big challenge. And for software service companies who've attempted to make the transition to business freemium, competing with free for a sales rep has turned into be quite a barrier. If it's not how you started in the marketplace, competing with free can be quite a challenge. And from a churn and customer satisfaction viewpoint, and business freemium customers often will come in and come out and move up and down from free to paid based on their workflow and the usage of the service itself. And that's a good thing in the eyes of the business freemium company because they're getting the value that they need. They may be infecting others. They're telling their friends, and they're paying when it makes sense. And you don't have to spend the time or energy to remarket to them. So you need to make sure that your systems and your approach is okay with understanding the difference between those that are unhappy and those that are using the service happily and moving in and out. And then finally, as you look at the website for a business freemium company, they want the customers to auto-convert. And so the product and packaging is much simpler. Now, there's a lot of thought that goes behind the usage and the features and the approach to the product and packaging, and it is art. But it also is taking that complex process and taking those triggers and distilling it into something that's digestible on the website and digestible in a hurry. And again, very different from a complex pricing mechanism that's driven and built for a distribution channel called a corporate salesperson. So the work's very different across functions, how they work together, and the metrics are very different. And this is an example for how and where the actual business work is indicative that the business freemium is not just an approach for distribution, but really is an entire business model. And these are a couple of quotes from a few of the CEOs in the Emergence Capital portfolio about how they think about this change. And at the highest order, part of what is happening is enterprise applications have been sold forever. And this is a big change to go from sold to a customer finding it, using the service, and then loving the service and telling their friends. And that's a very, very different model and different orientation, different cultural value from the business freemium companies and the software service companies. So you can see here David Sachs. We feel fortunate to be investors in Yammer. He's the founder and CEO of Yammer. They have over 2 million users in 2 years of being in business. And as you can see from his quote, it's inconceivable in his mind and in the minds of many business freemium customers to not allow the end companies to use the service for a long time, if forever, and having them determine what are some of the capabilities that they need either to auto-convert or to assist in that sale process working with the CIOs of large organizations. And Ivan Kuhn, the CEO of Usendit, we also feel fortunate to be investors in Usendit. He and their organization place such an emphasis on customers loving the service and being advocates for the service that they say really customer satisfaction doesn't really speak to what's required. It's about making loud advocates for the service is really how and what drives this business. And they have 15 million users, so we think they've been doing an exceptional job at this. And then we turn into the financial models. And one way to think about this, again, at the top is software service financial model, and at the bottom is business freemium financial model, is when you're the VP of finance or CFO of a large software service company, you have a software service financial model. And you are looking at the profitability of that financial model, and you're also looking for the allocations across functions in that business model, and you're used to what that model looks like, as is your investor base if you're a public company. And so when they look at the business freemium financial model, on first glance, it looks either unprofitable or very different in its nature than their existing model. And they're concerned about what are the implications if we do offer a free product. How will that cannibalize the existing customers who were paying prior for the base functionality that's now offered for free? So this is just as it was in the enterprise to software service transition, when those CFOs looked at that skeptically and or with concern as to its profitability. That is also starting to happen here again. And I'll give you some specific examples, but the takeaway is that it makes it difficult for the incumbents to move. And when you have a business freemium financial model and you're an entrepreneur for that, you want to be working with venture investors and ultimately with public market investors who have an appreciation for how the model is different and how the model is compelling. In the SaaS world, the model is pretty linear when it's working. And when you have the customer acquisition cost and you know what to put into Google Ad spend and you know what to pay for a rep, you know what you're likely to receive in paid clients and recurring revenue coming out the back. And these can be great business models that have great momentum that's stored up into the business. And the fundamental metrics in this case are customer acquisition cost versus what you are paid in a year or 2 years or 3 year period. But again, very linear, and it can be fantastic businesses, but they tend to be large users of capital throughout their life cycle, both up to and including the period for which they go public. And there are several public examples of this, Salesforce.com and then SuccessFactors. We're very pleased to be investors in both companies, in particular a growth stage investor in SuccessFactors. But as you look at their financial statements, you'll see, again, great businesses, but linear in their nature. As you look at the new business freemium financial model, though, because you have now millions of users who are infecting their friends with their service, and you can be changing the conversion rates of paid by making changes in your product and your feature and your packaging and your marketing approaches, you end up getting geometric growth in the user counts. You end up getting geometric growth in the conversion rates and in what the revenue looks like. And as a result, the model can go substantially nonlinear if you catch this at the right time and you're taking some of the right key actions. So the capital requirements in this case can be that there's capital required earlier in the cycle to generate and get this nonlinear growth starting to occur. And then you are choosing to drive the business faster if you want to be raising capital later. But these are choices for these entrepreneurs, but when these lines start to go geometric, they can be building exceptional businesses with great growth profiles while taking in significantly less capital throughout the life cycle. But what becomes different in this environment is the fundamental metric for investors is the customer life cycle value. Because not only does this change the marketing and the sales costs clearly and how you acquire clients, but because you now have a large free base that is also consuming some customer support resources, you need to be including the customer support expenses in what the customer life cycle value looks like, and in how you think about marketing expenses starts to change. So again, at the high order, very, very different financial models. The business freemium financial model can be exceptional when the right things are occurring with different capital requirements. And as an entrepreneur, you're definitely going to want to be working with investors who have a read for how this model works, because otherwise you'll spend a fair amount of time explaining it to them. So given that these models are very different, what are some of the work and growth areas where business freemium entrepreneurs and executive teams spend their time, which are very different than where software service executives may have spent their time? So one in particular is virality. As you work with leaders at companies like Box and Yammer and YouSendIt and EchoSign in the Emergence Capital portfolio and SurveyMonkey and others outside of it, they spend some time thinking about product virality as part of their design process, as part of their product management process. And that's company to company and user-specific company virality. That's not something that software service companies have spent time on because it's not where the leads come from. It's not where the business actually comes from into the top of the funnel. And so they work on other things that get it into the top of the funnel and assist with conversion. But virality, designing for company-to-company virality is an important lever for these companies. And then engagement starts to change. When you have a business freemium company, you actually care about the engagement of your free users because they are infecting others, both with word of mouth and with product. And knowing what that value looks like as you start to instrument, it's how do you set up the systems that scalably help a new user engage and be delighted about the service and get value from it, even when they may not be paying you. And so you have to think about engagement for free as well as engagement for paid. And then similarly, as you can see here, there are things like acting on mobile capabilities with Android, how you think about conversion mechanisms and packaging and pricing and uses of the data, spending a lot of energy to think about scalable mechanisms for customer delight, but it's also a company value, how you use the data across millions and millions of users to inform your solution, but also inform where to put the toll booths for paid, and other things that you can be doing in thinking about new additions beyond individuals but into groups, how you grow and expand internationally, and particularly how you get paid, leveraging marketplaces like Google App Marketplace, which is a business freemium community looking for more services, and how and when do you start to engage in growing marketing, and how do you grow with a sales team? But the sales team, again, is different from how and where the sales teams and software service leaders have gone to market. And it works really closely with marketing, and you need the permission to call on the client because they've signed up for a free service. So we just want to give you a read for these are some growth opportunities in our portfolio as we talk to the executives, but also as we talk with executives and business freemium companies around the country and around the world that is on their mind. And because their model is different, some of the areas where they place more emphasis, in particular around virality and engagement, is different than the prior generation of software. So as you think about venture capital, you need to think about this a little bit differently. The how and where and when and who you take venture capital is important here, because just like if there were venture capital investors from client-server software rolling into software as service, the models are different, and some of the advice to entrepreneurs might be quite different. So if you are a business freemium company, I would encourage you to definitely work with a firm or firms that has some exposure and passion around the new model. Because the issue here to lead in this new segment, I would be less worried about an incumbent software as service leader moving in to become the business freemium leader. They're very conflicted with the potential cannibalization of their existing business from free services, and the models are so incredibly different that it's unlikely that they will make the turn so that 10 years from now they are the leader in the segment. There will be new leaders in broad categories, and the companies you should be more concerned about are those in your segment who might use venture capital to accelerate. And that's how you may, and I suggest you think about the use of venture capital in this case, is for you to be the market leader 10 years from now in this new model, in whatever application category you're in. So Emergence Capital, we believe are unique in that we're the only venture capital firm that is focused exclusively on business applications, where end businesses are who pay to monetize services. So we don't invest in consumer services, but we absolutely invest in business applications that very small businesses, mid-market, and enterprise clients use. And so from our experience, software service we think fits beautifully in many, many markets around the world. Feel fortunate to have been investors in Salesforce.com and SuccessFactors, there's two of the largest IPOs in business applications and two of the best performing in technology period over the course of the last decade. We're also investors in Lithium and in ServiceMax, two companies that are doing extremely well in their segments about software service and are still private. But we also think that we have a unique point of view in business freemium services, being investors in the companies that you see listed here and the ones we've talked about today, and we feel very fortunate to be business partners with them and helping them as well as learning from them to define what this new market looks like. So if you are an entrepreneur or know an entrepreneur in this category and are interested in an investor that has context in business freemium and a network that we can help to bring to bear, please check us out on LinkedIn and engage as appropriate. So in closing, we've had a lot of conversations with business freemium executives that frame their business as software as service. And although we appreciate fully that end customers are just starting to come to terms with software as service and have their data and services outside, and there's some leverage that you can get to help them to understand what it is that you do, we would encourage you to evangelize this new model because it is very, very different. And if you evangelize this new model, you're helping your company separate in your approach and in your market and your message from the incumbent vendors and from software as service in that category, but you're also helping your brethren, business freemium companies, to grow the drumbeat for that it is a new model and a new world, and that will help you and your company be the leader in that segment and perceived as such, but it will also help to push this revolution forward. So I wanted to come back to what we said at the beginning. The experience of companies like SurveyMonkey, now the clear leaders globally in the survey and customer satisfaction market, we believe you will see replicated across many of the broad horizontal application categories and many new categories, such that really the leaders in business application innovation that are occurring right now are the business freemium companies. And that 10 years from now, we believe they will be the global leaders and the household names in businesses that some of the software service companies enjoy today. I look forward to your questions, and if I or we can be of assistance to you and you're growing out your business, please don't hesitate to contact me at Twitter, via LinkedIn, or email. Thank you. I will now take questions. Okay, looks like questions are completed. So we will end the session here. I appreciate you making time in your days, and again, look forward to working with you as appropriate. Have a good afternoon, evening, and day. Bye-bye.